He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rim. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
Just a little flyer, couple of
18.5 point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And welcome in a very happy Monday, Championship Monday. In fact, as in just a few hours, we'll be looking to crown a national champion in men's college basketball. A great Monday it is. I'm Joe Raineri. It is GameTime Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network as the University of Florida, the Gators, getting ready to take on the Houston Cougars for that national championship. And of course, we got a lot to go down that road with these two teams and this game, as for the most part, forget the spread in this game. It's irrelevant. This is all about picking the winner of the game here. Both money lines are pretty much right around the same any which way you cut it. I do think in this game, though, as we'll talk about over the next hour or so, is about the total. And I am not sure there is a correlation in this game between who wins and whether or not this thing goes over or under. I do think that the Houston Cougars and their reputation of being like watching paint dry has certainly kept this total, I believe, artificially low in this one. But there is no doubt, listen, this Houston Cougars team is the best defensive team in the country, bar none. They are not a great two-point shooting team. They're a jump shooting team, but they're not a great two-point shooting team. However, nobody shoots the three better than they do, or at least not as efficient as they do, as they are hovering right around that 39% on the season. And that includes all of these games here in March Madness. So when you look at all the data, this is going to come down to who wins this game and who loses this game is going to be all about who in the last couple of minutes of the game can make the shots. Now, we know there is a proven player on this court between these two teams that heads and tails above everyone else. When it comes down to it, he's proven time and time again he can be trusted when the game matters the most. And that, of course, is Walter Clayton Jr. there from the University of Florida. The thing that makes these two teams so unique tonight is the fact that, unlike what we just watched with the Duke Blue Devils, a team put together of nothing but freshman 18-year-olds who have never played a game together for any extended amount of time except for this season. Exceptional talent, exceptional length and height and athleticism, and you name it. But what they didn't have was experience, and that is what Houston brought to the table, where the average age of a Houston Cougar is on this team is 22, maybe 22, 23 years old. Guys that have been playing college basketball for a long time, guys that have been a part of teams making runs at national championships. And if you don't think experience mattered in the final couple of minutes of that game against the Houston Cougars for the Duke Blue Devils, I don't know what to tell you. Experience mattered for Houston. The problem is they are not a more experienced team than the one they're playing from the University of Florida here today. These are two very veteran-laden teams led by seniors and super seniors and guys that have been around the block here. And that is why I think this is going to be the heavyweight fight of all heavyweight fights here tonight. And boy, that game is not going off until 9 o'clock Eastern time here. And we, of course, will have you covered. A very special edition of In-Game Live Bracket Central will take center stage here on the SportsGrid Network. But until then, we got much more on this game and maybe the best way to approach it. But let's not forget, we got a whole lot of Major League Baseball going on here tonight on this Monday, the start of a new week. 22 Major League Baseball teams, in fact, are in action today. We already had one afternoon game, and that was with the New York Yankees taking on the Detroit Tigers. That game was moved up because temperatures in that part of the country tonight, not good. Looking like temperature going to be maybe in the teens, if not 20s tonight. So they wanted to hurry up and get that game in before the scheduled 7 o'clock Eastern time first pitch. They did, and unfortunately for the Yankees, they were on the losing end there of a 6-2 Tigers win. Mize outduels Rodon of the Yanks, and they just couldn't get it done. They trailed the entire game, in fact. Detroit handled their business easily, but weather is a concern pretty much across the board here tonight in all of these games that I am looking at. So keep that in mind here as Toronto and Boston get ready to take center stage coming up this hour. Also keep in mind, you're gonna have some issues in Chicago with the Cubs taking on the Texas Rangers in what might be let's face it, anytime you see a total of 6 on the board, we're either playing baseball in a hurricane and the winds are blowing dead in here, or there's some issues going on here. And I think we've got a couple of very good pitchers in Eovaldi going up against Justin Steele. Steele's had great success against the lineup here and the players on the Texas Rangers that'll be facing him tonight. We are absolutely going to have some wind being blown in from center field, but also you're going to have much cooler temperatures than we just had over the weekend in Chicago, where I think every game game 1 there against the Padres closed at 6.5. They scored 8 runs there. I believe 7 was the number on Saturday. That alone went flying over. And even yesterday, that total hovering around 7.5, that too got blown right past there in the over. So we had a very unique situation this weekend in Chicago with everyone expecting unders because of that wind blowing in. But what we ended up getting were a whole lot of overs. The difference is that we have got almost a 15, 20 degree difference here today than we did over the weekend. So keep that in mind. And by the way, we are learning this afternoon in that Boston and Toronto game. And Berrios, by the way, is the new pitcher in that game. It was supposed to be. Looks like they scratched the star. Looks like Berrios versus Fitz now. But also, it's being reported that there is going to be one very happy Toronto Blue Jay, and that Blue Jay is going to be Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and they are in agreement, it's being reported, on a 14-year, $500 million contract extension. It'll start in 2026. It'll include no deferrals. They're expecting more details to come out on this as obviously as the night and the days go on. But it does look like what never thought was going to happen in Toronto. It looks like Vlad Guerrero is not going anywhere. He will be the future of the Toronto Blue Jays as they look to lock him up pretty much forever at this particular point. So we'll have more on that, plus any other changes you need to know in Major League Baseball. But let's not forget, we got basketball on our mind here tonight, and that is what we'll talk about as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Did you know sportsbooks tend to draw up tighter bet lines for events that get even more bettors, like championship games or major matchups? My tip? Try betting on less popular sports. You might have a better shot at beating those odds. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri, and of course, we're thinking about a national championship. That's what's at stake here tonight. And the University of Florida, the Gators, taking on the Houston Cougars, two of the best in college basketball for much of the season, getting ready to do battle here in what is really, and the market is telling us, a coin flip game at this point here. Not a whole lot of crazy movement one way or the other. Florida opened up as the slight favorite It's a pick 'em. Just choose who the winner is going to be. That's your best approach to this. Or maybe there's a total that is worth taking a look at as we welcome in our good friend Mark Zinno here tonight, looking at this game. And the market's telling us flip a coin. You got a better shot of figuring it out here. So where is, if any, Zin, the value in this game tonight?
Well, I mean, look, I'll be blunt about it. I've said for 2 months, and you know this, Joe, I think Florida was winning the national title. That said, I bet on Houston because I think it's a bad matchup for the Gators. Right? Like when I started saying that 2 months ago, I had no idea what the path was going to look like to the Final Four. I think, believe it or not, I think Florida would have had a better chance of beating Duke. Had Duke not had this semi-historic collapse where they're up by 14 with 8 minutes left, 9 with 2 minutes left, 6 with 30 seconds left, and only made one field goal the final 10 and a half minutes of the game, they might be playing in this game, and Florida would have a better chance to win it. Houston's ball pressure and defense, if they can do that to Duke, they can do the same thing to Florida. And if Florida decides they want to get down by 8, like they did against Auburn at half, that defense ain't folding the way Auburn's did. So I think Houston's style of play here and their ability to slow the game down and make shots, because it's what they do, the best three-point shooting team in the country, will ultimately be what wins out here. What's the key number again? For them to keep Florida around 70 or less. Because I've said the same thing about Duke, and I'll say it again, and it's 100% true. While Florida can win an under game, I don't think Houston wins an over game at all. Like something that goes over this 140 by more than 1 or 2 points. If we're pushing 145, 147 here, we're talking, multiple possessions over this thing, that doesn't help Houston. I don't think Houston can win a 78-72 game. Like that's not, they could do it against TCU in the Big 12, but they're not doing it against this level of team and this level of offense. So they have to keep the Gators to around 70 points or less and try to win this thing 73-70 or 70-67 like they did against Duke. That's the game script for the Cougars tonight. That said, Joe, as I continue to ramble on here, first half under would be another play that I would take.
Thinking that maybe, and again, this is what, we're 24, 48 hours removed from both teams really going to war here. I think Florida has a slight advantage given the fact that they played the earlier game and they didn't play as physical a game, I think, than what Duke and Houston went to. And I guess maybe that's the problem, or the thing that worries me about Houston is that what the hell do they have left? Was that not their Super Bowls in? And that's the thing you got to fear here is that, Florida's got more depth than anybody, including Houston. Does that come into play in this game at some point? What does Houston have left after going to war with Duke like that?
I mean, it's hard to come back after a big emotional comeback win like that. Get right off the carpet again and do it all over and try to do it against a team that's equally as good, if not better. That does present a challenge. And the other challenge is, again, like, hey, the defense you played in the second half of that game was probably the best defense you've played against the best offense you've played all year long. I wouldn't bank on that happening back-to-back games in a row. I think that's another factor here. But, the one thing Houston can rely on is, look, if they can just focus on the glass and get the offensive rebounds the way they did against Duke, they're going to be able to control a lot here. I mean, the crazy part is that even though Houston was down by 6 at half, there was every reason, if you watch that game, they could have been up at half. They just struggled to make shots in the first, 12 minutes of that game. They were up 6-5 after 4 minutes had gone by, and you're like, this is a great script. This is the way Houston wants it. And then they just stopped making – I think they got outscored 11-3, and the next thing you know, it was almost nearly a double-digit game for most of that first half. Like, that's what Houston really has to avoid here is that scoring drought where they get outpaced, 12-2 over a 4-minute span, because then Florida gets to get in control. Again, if I'm Florida, I want to speed this thing up. I don't care if I miss a shot. Right. As soon as I get the ball, I'm running up and down the court. And like you said, I'm going to try to wear out a team that had to expend extra energy to keep themselves into a game and come back and win against Duke.
I'm having a hard time with the full game total here because I think the loser gets 70 points here, Zen. And here's my thinking. Houston has lost, 3 games this year? 1 to Alabama, 1 to, I believe it was San Diego State, and I think the other one was to Auburn, right? Mm-hmm. They were sped up in all of those games, especially the one against Alabama and Auburn in the SEC. So It's not this idea that against they did it. Creighton sped them up. They scored more than 70 points. We've seen them have to go up tempo and make shots in order to stay with teams that want to run.
Let's remember.
I mean, the idea that they're going to crawl this, though, is hard for me to fathom here because they didn't do it against other SEC teams.
Dive into the box score a little bit. 3 of their losses went to overtime, right? Like 85-80, Bama was OT, San Diego State was OT, and Texas Tech was OT. And, oh, by the way, the game that the largest loss they had was the second game of the year in a neutral site game against Auburn where they lost by 5, 74-69. So, again, I would kind of be surprised.
What did they do against Gonzaga? I mean, Gonzaga wasn't slowing down.
No, it wasn't.
So,
but you also, in that game, they shot, 50% from the field and 50% from 3. Like, the shooting numbers were just off the charts, right? And they got out to an early lead, a 21-10 lead after the first, 10 minutes of that game, and forced Gonzaga to have to play a ton, so much faster than what they probably wanted to in that game. So that's Houston's elixir, right? If they're making threes early, Joe, Florida may be dead in the water.
But again, if they're making threes early, they're made late. How did they not get to 70 points here? I think Houston's got to score more than 70 to win this. This is not going to be a 65-60 game, which is what I think the market thinks it's going to be. I don't see it. We'll talk more about it. Plus, take a look at some of these MLB games next here on the grid.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, coast to coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that ring. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network as we get ready for the national championship here tonight. College basketball. Will it be Florida? Will it be Houston? Boy, oh boy, it's going to be a fun one. Two heavyweights going at it. Mark Zinno back with us here. And Zin, to wrap this up here, let's talk most valuable player here if Florida wins and who Houston wins. Now, I think it's easy to say Walter Clayton Jr. for Florida. I don't see it being anybody else but him for Florida if they win. But Houston's a little, man, it can be any one of a number of guys with Houston, which makes it a little more difficult to look at that.
Well, you have to remember, too, the most outstanding player goes to somebody for the entire tournament, right? It's not just the final. You know, and when you look at like a guy like LJ Cryer, I mean, 30 points against Gonzaga in their toughest game, 17 with 7 rebounds against Tennessee, 26-5 against Duke. Yep. Like, okay, the dude poured it on when he had to in big time moments. I generally think Milos Uzan, is one of those guys where if he has a big night, he could steal this thing. Especially if he makes a lot of threes. Remember, he had 22 and saved them against Purdue. Mm-hmm. They're not in this game without Uzan bailing them out in that game against Purdue. So, and I just look at it and I go, from an odds perspective, I would probably throw something to either Uzan or Sharp and hope to get lucky that they have big nights. And, there's a recency bias and an immediacy bias in this thing. The guy who has the biggest game, if he had 1 or 2 other big games throughout the tournament, it's enough to push these people over the top because, well, voters are weak-willed and they have no spines and they're all, afraid to do the right thing.
I think it's going to be interesting for sure. Who's going to make that shot when it matters the most? Again, just about 9:00 Eastern time will be the tip for that national championship game. Coming up here, Zin, pretty big game in Washington as the Dodgers are visiting after losing a series to Philadelphia. Gore on the mound for Washington, May on the mound for the Dodgers here. Another reasonable price for the Dodgers. Do we trust the Nats? Were crushing the ball this weekend.
Yeah, and here's the thing, though. Here's the problem. Like, when you talk about a reasonable price for the Dodgers, I still don't want to lay nearly 2-1. Like, that's the issue. Now, do you want to trust the fact here that the Dodgers, who are only hitting $188 this season so far against lefties, granted it's early, granted a lot of things can turn around, they haven't played a lot of road games, but is Mackenzie Gore a high strikeout guy against the Dodgers team that doesn't strike out all that much in general, but hasn't hit lefties really well? I mean, again, you don't want the Nationals bullpen involved in any of this, Joe, right? So doesn't it feel like it's the Nationals plus a half run here in the first 5?
Yep.
And you hope that it's just a low scoring and maybe the Nationals steal an early run and they go up 1 and it ends up tied and you win by a hook, right? Like, that's the only way I can play this. You get the Nationals plus a half at -130. God, you got to lay -130 with the Nationals. That's gross. I'd almost rather take the Dodgers minus a half at even money, just out of principle, because laying 130 with the Nationals feels so disgusting. I need to take a shower. But nonetheless, that's probably the only way I could go betting on the Nationals in this spot, is just because, again, I don't want their bullpen involved in any of this, not against that lineup, and especially if there are righties coming out of that bullpen that the Dodgers can hit. Now, we're in trouble.
So, Zin, you and I both know over the last, for as many years as I can remember, one of the greatest trends has been look to fade those Sunday night baseball teams on Monday. I get 2 teams that played a doubleheader yesterday in action here today. I'm fading the Red Sox and the Cardinals, man. I don't see any reason why it should change here at this point.
Well, I mean, how much do you trust Liberatore is the real question for St. Louis. Like, I don't think they're a very good team. In fact, I think they'll probably be one of the bottom 5 teams in Major League Baseball by the time it's all said and done. So I don't necessarily trust them. But the thing is, the Pirates aren't hitting the ball at all. Like, they are not hitting. So there's a lot of what I would do is just take the under in that game in the first 5 and the fact that they might not get it. I'll give you one more thing real quick. Still looking at balls flying out of that ballpark in Sacramento. Padres team total over half of the game. Until I see otherwise, I'm going to keep betting overs in the A's new minor league ballpark.
No reason not to at this particular point. Also, we got a 6 in Chicago. 6. Here we are on April 7th. 6. They might get that in the first inning, and we can all laugh tomorrow. Zeno, enjoy the game, my man. Game Time Decisions will be back after this.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that roof. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. A very happy Monday here. Now, April the 7th, big day, of course, as it is the final day of college basketball season, the national championship tonight. And we have got you covered here on the SportsGrid Network, a very special edition of In-Game Live Bracket Central coming your way. But we got a lot else going on here. Major League Baseball games, only a couple of NBA games, but we got a decent slate of NHL action as well, as we welcome in our good friend Joe Madden here, who, you know, it's winding down in the NHL, the regular season here, Joe. Some teams running out of games here to be able to make a move for the postseason. Others just trying to solidify themselves. Tampa Bay and the Rangers is an interesting one here tonight. Priced right around minus 145, 150 is Tampa. It's reasonable. The Rangers, 5.5, I'm seeing as a total. Is Vasilevsky in goal for Tampa? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, we're looking at Andrei Vasilevsky here for the Tampa Bay Lightning and Igor Shesterkin for the New York Rangers. And this is going to come down to, Joe, what happens with Igor in this game. The last time they met up with the Tampa Bay Lightning, he was yanked after allowing 5 goals on just 13 shots on his net. And we look at the previous game versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. In that one, they did come out. They battled it out. He stayed in the full game, but still in that game, he allowed 5 goals. I think in this one, you've got to count on Tampa hitting Igor, even if he has a stronger performance than we've seen in the last couple. But I'm looking also for a Rangers team that is trying to make it into a wild card spot. And I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get there because they are battling it out here. 6 points behind the Montreal Canadiens, and it's asking a lot for them to be able to, but not eliminated as of yet. You know, the Rangers are going to put their best foot forward, and I do. You've got to look at the first period here. The first period for the over 1.5 goals in the first period at minus 126. I'd put some money on that, as well as you can look at both teams to score in the first period. You're always going to get better plus money in that one. That one's coming in at plus 168. You just got to count in that Andrei Vasilevsky allows one early by the New York Rangers, but the Rangers are upset with themselves. We saw the press conferences with Adam Fox, with Mika Zibanejad saying they need to come out stronger. They're off an embarrassing loss to the Devils where they got shut out 4-0. So expect the best out of both of these teams to start this game, Joe.
Yeah, it's this is going to be a good one here tonight. I think so is St. Louis and Winnipeg, and boy, St. Louis just rattling off wins. Joe, you and I have talked about this team, saying, boy, don't look now. This looks awfully reminiscent of this St. Louis team that won a cup a few years ago. They are quite the dog here tonight against Winnipeg. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's hard to swallow, the Winnipeg Jets here, even with how strong they are at home, with what we've seen out of the St. Louis Blues, winning their last 12 out there on the road. This team has been so strong, Joe, and I'm just checking. It looks like we do have Joe Hofer confirmed, not Jordan Binghamton. So that is a blow for the St. Louis Blues, if I can get my words out correctly, right? Having Joe Hofer, but he still has solid numbers on the season. I expect this to be playoff style hockey. You look at the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets at home this season, 28-6-4. They're so strong. First in the Central, 108 points. You've got to think Connor Hellebuck is in for a big day. Now, Joe Hofer, probably the better answer than Jordan Binghamton, because I did have some reservations. His numbers versus the Jets were really shaky out there. He'd been allowing those goals to come in. Connor Hellebuck has allowed 3 goals on 31 shots the last meeting versus the Blues, but in the 3 games prior, only allowing those 2 goals. I count on him to really limit those goals out there, but also Joe Hofer to be able to come out stronger than they would have seen Binghamton, and I think that's why they have turned to Hofer in this one. The St. Louis Blues can't take those penalties, and if they don't, Joe, they have the possibility of winning. I'm going to take this one to go to overtime. I think it's the best bet here. The overtime bet coming in at plus 320 as so meaningful, even for the Winnipeg Jets, while they sit first in the Central, only 3 points in front of the Dallas Stars, but also this one to be playoff style hockey. The under 5.5 is too juiced for my liking. Give me the under 4.5 for that alt number at plus 215. I do think 2-1 win for either of these teams in OT.
I love it there, Joe. And how about your, I don't want to jinx it, but your Calgary Flames need to keep winning some games here. I mean, San Jose is looking forward to the season being over. They are just absolutely horrific down the stretch. But, man, if there was a puck line tonight, it feels like Calgary should be it here. Calgary in a blowout, Joe?
Oh, it feels like it, right, Joe? But taking Calgary in a blowout is a scary situation. Facing a divisional opponent that would love to see them, right, take the loss there. I think the San Jose Sharks pushed them, and you look at Tyler Toffoli. He used to be part of the Calgary Flames organization, so I think he comes out strong versus the Flames. But you've got to count in Calgary to be able to hit Georgiev in this matchup. The Calgary Flames are sitting 6 points behind the Wild now, but they've got 2 games in hand. So they're still not out of the equation. It does seem like the Wild should be able to hold that last playoffs or wild card spot. But Calgary determined. I think they'll go over 3.5 goals today. And I think this will be led by Jonathan Huberdeau. Huberdeau has been so strong out there on the ice. And while you could look at him for the goal at plus 210, I think he gets a goal and an assist or a combination of 2 goals and maybe another assist out there. So I'm going to look at him just for the 2+ points in this one. The 2+ points for Jonathan Huberdeau coming in at plus 350. Against the defense of the Sharks, against Georgiev in a net, you've got to think Huberdeau is going to show up big. You could also look at Nazem Kadri for his goal. He's been really strong on the road for the Calgary Flames. If those 2 guys are not getting points, Calgary's not winning. They're definitely not going over their team total, and the Sharks will get the win here. So keep your fingers crossed on them.
Fingers crossed on there. You know, there was a time where we'd see Edmonton playing Anaheim, and you'd be lucky if it wasn't $3 favorite in Edmonton. But, boy, times have changed here, Joe. I mean, minus 140, 145, Edmonton a favorite. Boy, oh, boy, the Anaheim Ducks made folks a lot of money this year backing them on the puck line. What are you thinking?
It's got to be the Ducks or nothing for a side, Joe. You look at the Edmonton Oilers, and I know they do have depth players like Bouchard, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, but you also think about them with a backup to a backup in net. It's not even Calvin Pickett coming in net. It's the backup to him here that they've just called up, and I do think he will struggle here. Versus, Troy Terry. There's still playmakers on the Anaheim Ducks. You got McTavish looking for point number 50. Leo Carlson has every ability to get a goal, so it's got to be the the Ducks, but I think we will see Edmonton be able to score in this first period as well. I like both teams to score in the first period. That's coming in at plus 144. I'd take Evan Bouchard of the Edmonton Oilers for that anytime goal. Great plus money at plus 390. You've got to look at these offensive defensemen out there. And then Leo Carlson at plus 300 for the anytime goal. Joe, I think we're going to get a handful of goals in this one, as you really can't trust goaltending.
And you got Seattle and the Kings as one of the late night specials here. I don't know anybody back in Seattle here, Joe. How about you?
Yeah, it's really hard to back the Seattle Kraken. They're coming off 2 games, and both of those games able to put up 5 goals. But I do think the offense comes back down to reality. I can't trust it. They have a team total of 2.5. I wanted to bet it to the under, but it's minus 154. I think out that under 1.5 goals here for the Seattle Kraken. I struggle to see them clearing over 1 goal versus the LA Kings. While they're sitting second in the Pacific with 97 points, 4 points ahead only of the Edmonton Oilers. So if Edmonton starts to turn things back around, they're not far ahead of them. They've got 5 points behind Vegas. So look for the Kings to get this win here at home. They're coming off, though, a big win versus the Oilers. And then I think you probably look at regulation or the first period puck line here for the LA Kings.
All right, looking for them to get it done there. All right, those are your 5 games in the NHL. When we come back, we'll talk some Major League Baseball as well as, a national championship coming up in college basketball between the Gators and the Cougars here. And we'll get Joe Madden's thoughts on the Major League Baseball slate and that college basketball game when Game Time Decisions continues.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, coast to coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that roof. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
Just a little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Joe Madden. As Joe, let's talk about upcoming Major League Baseball matchup. One close to your heart there is your Toronto Blue Jays getting ready to take on the Boston Red Sox. And we just learned over the last hour that it's official or almost official that Vladdy Guerrero's not going anywhere He going to be a Blue Jay for a very, 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 very long time, Joe. To the tune of what? 14 years, 500 million at least? I mean, tell me they're not celebrating in the streets in Canada right now.
Are we? Are we really celebrating, Joe? I don't know. Some people might be, but it's definitely not what I'm looking at to celebrate here. 14 more years of Vladdy, 14 more years of us hoping Vladdy lives up to his potential that he has out there on the field. And I think now that he's being paid, you're going to look at a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. who's going to take a couple of steps backwards. So I think if you got him to win the home run props this year, you're sitting in a bad position because I do think he slows down and he slows down fast now he's being paid. I haven't had faith in him before, Joe, and I think a 14-year deal with this much money, he's going to sit fat and sassy in that clubhouse, and I don't think he's going to be able to get those home runs on the board.
Oh, my goodness here. But they are taking on a Red Sox team that just played a doubleheader and Sunday Night Baseball. Should we, I mean, that's a cheap price here, it looks like, to be able to get Toronto here in this spot and your new $500 million man in the lineup.
Yeah, so the $500 million man should be able to come out and get something done, right? You would hope so here versus Fritz of the Red Sox. But if he can't, I'm going to be shaking my head again today, Joe. He won't get my money. He still has to pass a physical, remember, so hopefully he can pass that for his sake to get this contract. But I look at Toronto and I look at the amount of runners that they do leave on base in scoring position in those 3 games versus the Mets. They went 2 for 21 with runners in scoring position. So I struggle here with the Jays and what we've been seeing out of them. I do think it's a prime opportunity for them to get a win versus the Red Sox, though. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the amount of runs we should get on the board for the Red Sox, and I'm just going to take their team total over 4.5. I do think they come out and hit Toronto in this matchup. Toronto's been giving up those runs. So give me the Red Sox team total over 4.5.
Over 4.5 it is. All right, Joe, let me get your thoughts on this upcoming national championship game. Pick 'em price here, mostly in the market. And let's be honest, who has the ball last and who's going to make the big shot when is ultimately, I think, what this game is going to come down to. How are you approaching this one here tonight? And give us a couple of props if you have any in this game.
Yeah, going cautiously in to start this game, right? Like on the side, on the total, because I do think we're going to see a run by one or both of these teams at some point, and we're going to be able to come back in on the other team with value. So what I'm going to do going in, because what I want to see is I want to see Florida go on a run where I can come in on Houston, plus 6.5, plus 7.5. At that point, I'll grab Houston plus the points with a sprinkle on the money line because I love what we saw out of them versus Duke. They came out so strong. They never said die in that game, and they can give Florida fits if they contain Walter Clayton Jr. Now, if they contain him and don't allow those clean looks for one Clayton Jr., Florida's going to struggle, but I do think he'll still be able to get his threes. I'll look at Walter Clayton Jr. for 4+ made threes in this matchup, looking for those to sink nicely. That's coming in at plus 130. He went 5 of 8 from deep versus Auburn, and I do think he can do it here versus Houston, even though it is a step up of a defense. Then I'll look at Will Richard. Will Richard coming out here for his points for Florida. He's been nice and strong out there on the court. Now, in his last 2 games, we've seen Walter Clayton Jr. really stepping up with the defenses not able to contain him, but with Houston's defense at that other level. Putting that pressure on Walter Clayton Jr. will force those assists to Will Richard, and I do think Will Richard will nicely clear 15.5 points. He was able to do that in his 2 games prior to those last 2, and I do think he should nicely be able to do it today. Now, when we look at Houston, you got to look at those rebounds. Juwan Roberts coming out nice and strong for those rebounds. We can get him for 8+ rebounds in this one. It's coming in at plus 148. 12 rebounds versus Duke, 9 rebounds versus Tennessee. I do think he's in a big night. He's so strong on the glass that he'll get those rebounds on the board. And then we can't deny LJ Cryer looking at that game versus Duke. Joe, I was blown away by his ability to sink those threes in that one on the defense of Duke. And I think Duke's defense is better than the Florida defense he's going to see here. So looking at LJ Cryer for 4+ made threes, that's coming in at plus 130. I could see him even getting 5 or 6 made threes in this one. And if that's the case, Houston's definitely getting the win, in my opinion. So it's going to come down to what these teams are able to do. We know Houston can hit from that free throw line. My problem with Florida is they give up those opportunities. They foul too easy. And then you're going to see Houston be able to hit on those. And Florida, I'm not seeing them capitalizing on those opportunities when they get to that free throw line, Joe.
Listen, all that you are saying right now to me just leads me to play the over, Joe, because if we're hitting those kinds of threes and both teams capable of doing, if Clayton is going to get his 25, 30, Cryer's going to get his 20, 25. There's no way we're staying under in this game. I just don't see how in the world, especially coming off an all-out war 48 hours ago, if I'm Houston coming off against Duke there, I may not be as intense defensively either. I'm sorry. I get everyone wants to go Houston, but Joe, I want you to hit all of these 3-ball props, because if you do, this game goes flying over the 140 right now.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And the over 140.5 is coming in at minus 112, Joe. And I do think it's a great way to go pregame and then just play around with the numbers. When one team goes on a run, you could do a Scotty Wetzel special. And when one team goes up big, taking the other team on the money line and then coming back on the other side, because we're going to get those runs in this game.
I think this is going to be a fun one. I think it's the way it should be, as well, as we've got the two best in college basketball that are going to go head-to-head for a national championship. Stories galore and narratives on both sides. I think it's going to be absolutely awesome. We'll have more on this game and a quick look at the scoreboard when Major League Baseball, we're off and running. Game Time Decisions.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, coast to coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that roof. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
Just a little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network as we look to wrap up this first hour here together. But we got an update here on a couple of Major League Baseball games. Early start. The Pittsburgh Pirates led off the bottom of the first with a solo home run. They're up on the Cards 1-0 right now. Nats And Gore went really quickly with the Dodgers. 1-2-3 here in that first inning. Nats up here with a runner on second. And the Blue Jays now have bases loaded for, anybody want to guess? Yes, you know what's coming there, the $500 million man. Joe Madden in the house here. And Joe, if he hits a grand slam, Vladdy Guerrero, I'll be the first one to admit he's worth every dime that the Blue Jays over the next 400 years are going to be paying him. That is correct. They locked him up, and he's going to earn that money right on this at-bat here as we are in, it looks like, the top of the first inning here. 2 outs, bases loaded for the Blue Jays. All right, a couple other games coming up here. Joe, interesting one with the Texas Rangers here tonight, taking on the I believe the Chicago Cubs with a total of, is that correct, Joe? Is that 6? Is that a 6 number I'm looking at? Oh, my word. Should we just bet the over on principle here?
Yeah, it really does feel like we should look at the over, because you look at Justin Steele coming out here for the Cubs, and he struggled to start this season. You also look at the Cubs bullpen, and do we really trust them? The bullpen has an ERA of 5.18 on this season so far. Young season, I know, and they have the opportunity to turn things back around, but I do think the Rangers will be able to hit them. And then when we look at Nathan Vadaldi here, he's come out strong so far, but I still think we're going to see the Cubs get a couple runs on the board. We do have a stronger bullpen for the Rangers. That Rangers bullpen coming in with a 3.26. I'm going to look for the Rangers to get the win, and I won't be shocked, Joe, if this goes over that total of 6. It's just too low. And yeah, if Vladdy gets a grand slam, brings these runners home, you can say yes for this game, but talk to me in 10, 15, 20 games. That's where Vladdy's going to be comfortable, right? He just got paid. Of course he'll come out strong.
I can't. Well, it's good news. He's already on base, though. Kirk is going to have to hit the grand slam. Talk to me about Baltimore and Arizona here tonight. Gallen on the mound against Eflin here. How you looking at this one?
Yeah, this should be an interesting matchup between these two. I think we've got a pretty strong pitching duel between Zach Eflin and Gallen here. I'm looking for both of them to come out, be able to put up good strikeout numbers versus each other. The Baltimore Orioles started the season off. Their bats so nice and hot, but they have gone ice cold as of late, and I struggle to see them really hitting Gallen in this matchup. And when I look here at the Arizona Diamondbacks, I do expect them to be able to get the win. I think they'll get a hit or two off of Eflin to start this one, but I don't see very many more coming. So while I look at this total, and I can't take the full game total to the under 8.5, because I'm a little worried about relief pitchers coming out here, because if the Baltimore Orioles all of a sudden come alive, we're going to see it go over that total. I think the first 5 is where you want to target. Look for both of these teams to come out quieter in the first 5 innings in this one to stay under that total of 4.5. Joe, now you're going to have to lay the juice to the under 4.5. It's coming in at minus 130, but with what I'm expecting out of these pitchers to start, like you look at Gallen versus the Yankees, he was basically flawless, it felt like, out there versus the Yankees, going just over 6 innings. He had 13 strikeouts. So looking at him against cold bats here of the Orioles, we should see the limited runs coming in this one. And then Eflin versus my Blue Jays. Yeah, the Blue Jays might have got some runners on base versus him, but he was able to get that big win versus them and came out nice and strong. So the under 4.5 runs in the first 5 innings, Joe.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, you're right. He looked really good against the Yankees. Made the Yankees look ridiculous for sure. And the Orioles haven't been hitting, and Marte goes down. The Diamondbacks haven't exactly been hitting the cover off the ball as of late also. So the under 4.5 in the first 5, I'm on board with that. So we got a little something for everyone. We got NHL, we got Major League Baseball, we got a national championship game, Joe, coming up. Couple of NBA games getting ready to start. And then, of course, the playoffs will be here in both the NHL and the NBA, Joe. Can you believe it? Here we are on April 7th already. And the playoffs, boy, it feels like that's its season in itself. And I'm looking forward to it. But we got to get past tonight's national championship game first. We appreciate it as always, Joe. Enjoy the games here tonight. Let's cash a few of these tickets and get ready. We got another hour of Game Time Decisions coming up. Much more to break down for the national championship next on the Grid.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, coast to coast, only on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and you know, launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that roof. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
Just a little flyer, couple 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on.
All right, welcome in GameTime Decisions here. Another hour together on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri, and it is National Championship night. That's right. The final college basketball game of the season is coming your way just before 9 o'clock Eastern time, I believe, is when the opening tip-off is scheduled there between the Florida Gators and the Houston Cougars. A look at the current odds here in the marketplace, and pretty much what it was to begin with here. I mean, we saw Florida open up as a 1.5 point favorite. It's pretty much a pick 'em depending on what you're looking at. Either way, I do not believe that the spread is coming into play in this game. It's just a matter of picking the winner and who you think will make the most shots when it matters the most. In all likelihood, this game will be decided late and not early here, but the total remains interesting to me as we've seen it open at 142. I've seen it bet down now to 140.5, but I am starting to see some buyback here in the market. And I agree with that buyback, because I believe the loser in this game is going to get at least 70 points with the way we're going to be able to get the 3-point shots for both teams, the ability to be able to maybe get a couple of second chance points for both teams. And we have already seen Houston play up-tempo teams from the SEC, for one, that have had success pushing the tempo on them, and they have been more than happy and obliged by scoring more than 70 points themselves. You don't have to look any further than what Gonzaga did to them a couple of games ago in the tournament, where they had to score 80 to win, and they did. And we saw Alabama, we saw Auburn, we've seen games in which, while Houston loves to play like watching paint dry, they have also shown an ability to be able to go toe-to-toe with some of the more up-tempo teams and play their style and win. I don't think this is a first one to 65 wins. I think both team totals are pretty good bets here tonight, hovering around 70 points, 70.5 points, no matter who you think is going to win this game. I definitely think This is going to be 75 wins and not 65. And it feels like the market is so used to just betting unders with Houston that I don't think they're taking into consideration that if you go back with the Florida Gators, can somebody recall the last time that they have not scored at least 70 points in a game? It feels like it's been a hot minute, and that is because, well, it has been. In fact, the last time they didn't was when, I believe, first week of the new year when they played Tennessee and basically shot themselves out of that game at Tennessee there, in which they were embarrassed in that game. But that was it. Outside of that, you start looking at what the University of Florida has done offensively. Man, they are, I'm not seeing anything even remotely close to being under 70 points in any game. And keep in mind, Houston Cougars are coming off an absolute war. And would anybody blame them if that win against Duke felt like a national championship for them? We're less than 48 hours removed from them going by what everyone had considered to be the toughest test and maybe the most physical team that Houston had gone up against in Duke defensively. And, well, I mean, Duke went the final 10 minutes and 31 seconds without scoring more than one bucket. I don't think the University of Florida is going to have that issue, especially since most teams that come off of playing Duke aren't really great, especially early on. So I think the three ball is going to be flying tonight for both teams. I think they're going to leave it all out on the floor, but I don't see this being a 65-60 game in any way, shape, or form. I think points are coming, and I think all the value, not in the side, because it's a coin flip game. I think the value lies in the total here as the market artificially continues to push this thing down, and I don't see it. Houston has proven they can go toe-to-toe with teams that want to go up-tempo, and the way, and as good as they are, a team that shoot 39, 40% from three, guess what? Threes are coming for both teams. And, boy, I don't think either team has to shoot 40% for this game to go flying over the total. So that game coming up 9 o'clock, and we've got a very special edition of In-Game Live Bracket Central coming your way. So we'll have all the in-game action that you need to know. That is coming up later here when the national championship tips off in San Antonio. We also have a couple of NBA games going on because, well, the NBA doesn't like us, and they're going to force us to watch the Philadelphia 76ers and Sacramento Kings continue to play basketball. But such is life. Miami taking on Philadelphia. Miami laying 13 points. The total continues to be bet up, though. Opened up at around 213. We're seeing 217s right now in that marketplace. So we're getting an awful lot of push to the over tonight with Miami and Philadelphia. And Miami, well, they have shown they can certainly score, especially against teams filled with nothing but G League players. That game is coming up at 7:40, but Sacramento and Detroit still seeing 5.5s, 230.5 currently in the market on that one is Detroit. Pretty much playoff bound. We know it's Sacramento. Well, they're trying to figure out where it went all wrong this year, but I have a pretty good idea that we can circle the date that happened. So we got 2 games happening in the NBA, 5 in the NHL, and a whole heck of a lot of baseball. In fact, we're seeing the Pittsburgh Pirates right now. So my theory is holding true here so far with fading teams off of Sunday Night Baseball, especially ones that played in a doubleheader and got destroyed in both. The Cardinals down 3-0 here in the bottom of the second. Pirates are still up with no issues hitting the ball. The Dodgers and the Nats are underway, but there's no score in that one. And the Blue Jays, once again, stranded more runners. Stop me if you've heard that before. But don't worry, they did just spend $500 million on Vladdy Guerrero Jr. and locked him up for the next 140. Nope, sorry, that's a typo. 14 years. But it's going to feel like 140 years, Blue Jay fans, any which way you cut it. since they can't seem to score any runs, whether you're paying him or not paying him, no score, top of the second inning right now in that one. Yankees were nice enough to show up to Detroit and lose. Thank goodness they started that game early, as they were expecting temperatures, I believe, tonight to be in the teens. They didn't want that. Much easier to hit the ball when the temperature is 28, 29 degrees. Didn't matter for the Yankees. They didn't hit the ball. The Tigers handled business 6-2 in that one. Carlos Rodon now back-to-back losses on the season as he got tagged for, stop me if you heard this one, another home run. Not that surprising here. So the Tigers off to a pretty good homestand here, but they did play the White Sox over the weekend, so I wouldn't be exactly buying my playoff tickets just yet, Detroit Tigers. But we got plenty more coming up, including, man, if you're having trouble sleeping tonight, turn on the Rangers and Cubs game, as that total's hovering around 6. Yeah, not expecting a whole lot with that one. Evaldi on the mound, as well as Steele for the Cubs. We got more national championship stuff to break down as well here. Game Time Decisions on the Grid.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Did you know sportsbooks tend to draw up tighter bet lines for events that get even more bettors, like championship games or major matchups? My tip? Try betting on less popular sports. You might have a better shot at beating those odds. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Welcome back. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. A very special Monday, in fact, as it's the final day of college basketball. That's right, a national championship, as we are down to two teams here. The University of Florida, the Gators, getting ready to take on the Houston Cougars. Great storylines, great narratives on both sides. And truly, if we're all being honest, outside of the Duke Blue Devils, probably the two teams that a lot of folks saw making it to this particular point. The market kind of has this thing split down the middle. It's a pick 'em game according to the market. That total starting to get pushed up here a little bit at that 141 price again. It did open up at 142. And I told you a very special edition of In-Game Live Bracket Central is coming your way with all the action here tonight during the game with none other than our good friend, the coach, James Young. He'll be center stage with you guys. And Coach, this is the way you got to love it, right? Two of the best teams in the country by far have consistently been at the top of the leaderboard in just about every category. It's the way it should go down, and it's not a big spread. It's a pick 'em game, and quite honestly, how do you think this is going to go? Whoever makes the big shot last, you think this is a blowout? What do you think we're going to get here tonight?
Joe, it's not going to be a blowout. I mean, this is going to be a tight game, and I wouldn't be shocked, folks, if neither team had a lead of more than 6 to 8 points. You look at two teams, obviously, that are both top 10 in offensive, defensive, adjusted efficiency. So it's going to be there. The big question for me right off the bat, Joe, is how is this game going to be officiated? You know, Houston wants to be physical. They want to make this a half-court game, and they want to make this a street fight. Now, I heard you last segment. Are they capable of scoring 70, 75, 80 points? Yes, absolutely. Do they want to? Absolutely not. They want to play this game in the half-court and try and walk the ball off the floor. What thing's really good about Houston, you even saw it during the second half versus Tennessee, is even when Tennessee pressed them, they still broke the press, they set up, and they got into offense. I wonder if Todd Golden tries to ramp the pace up and try and get this to go a little bit more up and down where it's fluid, where his guys can play in space.
It's fascinating. Everyone I talk to, Coach, and if you like the Gators, it all centers around, at least the perception is around Walter Clayton Jr. Although, he went MIA a couple of games here, and there are other guys, namely the depth in the bench that Florida has, that were more than capable of showing up here. I'm just amazed with both of these teams. We're not dealing with 18-year-olds here, Coach. We're dealing with dudes who are 22 years old, been around the block. So I don't see that we're going to have the choke job like we might have had because of the youth and experience with Duke. I don't see that in here, Coach. I think both teams have guys that want the ball when it matters the most. Who is it for Florida? Who is it for Houston that's going to want the ball late?
Well, obviously it's going to be Walter Clayton Jr. The question is Calvin Sampson going to allow him to have the ball? I thought there was plenty of times that Bruce Pearl could have sent a second guy at him, double-teamed him, hard-hedged the ball screen a little bit better, and really just disrupted him when he had the ball. And I just didn't see that, particularly down the stretch in that Florida game versus Auburn. For Houston, it's not the guy you're thinking, but it's the guy I've been talking about a lot the last month, and that's Emmanuel Sharp. He is the guy at the end of the day going to take big shots, long shots. You think about the Tennessee game, hitting 3 threes in the second half when Tennessee got the lead down to 10. You think about the fact that he was cold, and I know L.J. Cryer was hot like fish grease for a lot of that game, but the biggest shot of the game could have been that 3 by Emmanuel Sharp when they were down 6, under a minute to get it down 3. He's going to be able to get to his spot and get shots off. The interesting thing to also watch is you saw Calvin Sampson do something interesting. With the Duke Blue Devils defensively, he eventually got, I know, in foul trouble too for Milos Uzan, but they ended up getting Emmanuel Sharp at the point. So you will see Calvin Sampson kind of play chess a little bit to try and find a matchup between his 3 guards that he feels like he's going to expose the most. That's something to watch out for. The main prop everybody's looking at is Walter Clayton Jr., who was obviously on fire, over 30 points last game. It's at 19.5. Folks, I would be stunned if he got to 20. I don't think Calvin Sampson's going to let him go off like this. If he hits a shot early, you're going to see him try different defenders. He'll run different guys at him. He may run a double team around him. They're a lot better at ball screen defense. You could see Tugler or Roberts or Francis come out and hard hedge or double it. You won't see a lot of icing from them. So I don't think he goes over his points prop. I look him to go under, which means other guys look to step up. the Elijah Martins. And then there's the big man play, which I think is not getting talked about enough. Both teams, 3 quality big men. Which big men take control of the game? Now, you look at Florida, they're one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country versus one of the toughest, nastiest set of 3 big men that I've seen in a long time in Houston. Who wins the rebounding battle is going to be key. Calvin Sampson talks about winning possessions. That means don't turn the ball over and get more O boards. That is the Houston recipe. If you see Houston getting a lot of O boards and controlling it early, that is bad signs for Florida.
It's the big men have been, and the depth of Florida. I mean, you don't have to look any further than what they did to Johnny Broome first half versus second half, right, Coach? Having that luxury and that kind of rotation in there where you've always got fresh guys you can throw at the big boys there on the other side. When we come back, I want to ask you about this, Coach, because my big question with Houston tonight is what's left? I mean, they just went to war with Duke and had to have an unbelievable comeback, the likes that we have not seen. What do they have left energy-wise? What do they have? Is there a chance they come out sluggish in this one here? Was that Duke game possibly their national championship game? So there's a lot to dive into on that one there, Coach, and I'm fascinated to hear on what you think with the coaching matchup, too, because we got 2 guys from totally different backgrounds. Oh, this should be interesting here. We got more with the coach as Game Time Decisions continues.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and you know, launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rim. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network, getting ready for a national championship game here tonight. Of course, a special edition of In-Game Live Bracket Central coming your way. And the coach, James Young, he'll have you covered here tonight. He joins us again. And, Coach, let me ask you, my worry about Houston is, man, that was a war with Duke. And that's a lot of energy, a lot of effort, a lot of toughness to come back and win that game. teams sometimes take a step back, at least early in the game, Coach, because it's tough to get up for another one there. I know it's the national championship, but that was an all-out war against Duke. What are we going to get from them early in this game?
Well, if you're Kelvin Sampson, that is obviously a concern. They probably didn't practice hard yesterday, Joe. They probably just kind of walked through, and obviously they walked through today. If this was a team that wasn't experienced with an experienced coach, I would be very concerned. I'm not as concerned as you because they are mentally tough. And remember, folks, they may be, after seeing on the internet, run an average mile of 5:19. Average. That means the bigs aren't far behind the guards. Maybe they run, 5:45, still a sub 6-minute mile, which is absurd. So they're the best in-shape team in the country. Now, you're talking about their mental fatigue is, can they get themselves up? Let me tell you something. Kelvin Sampson probably enjoyed that game for about an hour or two, and he was on to the next one. So I expect them to come out with ferocity. And let's be honest, Joe, they didn't play particularly well shooting the ball, particularly in the first half. So I think that he understands that they have to play better and shoot the ball better and do a better job of competing. So to me, my more concern is on the other side is, do you get some of the Florida guys, particularly Todd Golden, are they a little nervous? Do they press? You know, is the moment too big for them? You know, you got to remember, Houston, for all that's said and done, has been close to the Elite Eight Final Fours over the course of the year. So Jerron Roberts has been in this situation. Crier's been in this situation. Sharp's been in this situation. Now, maybe not a national championship game, but it's going to be really interesting both sides because we're like splitting hairs, Joe. We're trying to find what angle is what. Honestly, there is no advantage to either team. It's going to be for 40 minutes, which team executes better and which team takes away the other team's trying to do. Whoever does that better is going to win the game. And I think we're going to have a really good one tonight.
So do we think that are we thinking, Coach, that the first half is going to be indicative of what we're going to get full game, at least from a scoring and total perspective?
No, if you want to bet what half scores more, it's going to be a second half, obviously, because number one, if it's a close game, we're talking about foul, stop clock in the last minute and a half, right, Joe? But then the other thing is I equate this to a heavyweight fight where there's going to be the first 4 minutes, there's going to be a lot of jockeying for position, just trying to figure each other out. Remember, folks, Duke Houston was 143.5. 4 minutes into the game, it was down to 131. Yeah. It dropped like a rock. So to me, that's something to watch out for is if you are thinking over, maybe you wait, let the game start slow, and then jump in live. If you're Joe's philosophy, thinking that maybe, you know, the moment of Duke and coming back, maybe too much for Houston to start, maybe you let the game start, let Florida start quick, let that line move up, jump. I think there's going to be betting opportunities on both sides and with the over-under, both sides as well, Joe, because I think this game is going to ebb and flow as coaches try to get their matchups that they want.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, Coach. You know, if Florida wins, everyone's convinced it's Walter Clayton Jr. is going to be your most outstanding player. Who is it if Houston wins?
That's the problem. That's why if you take Houston, I wouldn't take a guy. I would just go Houston on the money line. If there's one guy I think could do it, it's probably Emmanuel Sharp because he tends to take the big shots. And if it's Florida, the guy I would watch out for is Elijah Martin. He's been in this spot with Florida Atlantic. And think about it. If the game comes down to a couple possessions, maybe a couple of steals and transition dunks where Florida needs to open the game up a little bit, could be where you look at. Obviously, Elijah Martin, it's like 32-1 for MOP. Yeah. That's something to take a look at because if you're Kelvin Sampson, you're not going to let Walter Clayton beat you.
Anybody but Walter Clayton here seems to be the prevailing thought process. But the good news is, Coach, we get to see you a little bit later for all the live action, man. Enjoy the game here tonight. We got more Game Time Decisions coming up next on the Grid.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and you know, launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that ring. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you stopping by as we're getting ready for a national championship night. Here's the Florida Gators and the Houston Cougars getting ready to do battle. I hope you had a nap today because that won't tip off till just before 9 o'clock Eastern time, but should be a game for the ages. And by the way, we had mentioned a little earlier a big signing in Major League Baseball, and I think he just scored a run too, as Toronto is up 2-0 on Boston, and we welcome in our good friend Craig Mish here, who no doubt heard the news, unlike Russell Wilson, that Vladdy Guerrero Jr. and the Toronto Blue Jays have finally appeared to have agreed on a contract extension. 14 years, $500 million. My question, Craig, is what took so long with this, really, with this team?
Yeah, look, I don't know exactly, but I think that from the Blue Jays' perspective, let's be honest, Joe, they got to wake up here and smell the roses a little bit. That's not to say, by the way, that Vladdy Jr. deserves this kind of money, because I'm not sure that this may not look like, Prince Fielder in 7 years or 6 years. I'm not even sure that this may end up working out. But, Joe, they can't get anybody to play there, and you have a hometown guy that's about to walk. I think it's a massive overpay, but necessary, because the Blue Jays just can't sign any players for whatever reason. It's like the two teams in baseball that have this money to spend and players don't want to play there are San Francisco and Toronto. And by the way, I don't understand those situations there. So good for the Blue Jays to get this done. I don't know that this necessarily makes them a contender. They were still one of those teams that I went into in the season thinking they're going to be worse than most people think. But good for him. Good for the Blue Jays. And the other thing, Joe, that you got to wonder is, how many years away are we from having these contracts disappear completely if the new collective bargaining agreement has anything to say about that? So take the money while you can is what I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to think that this eases maybe the clubhouse a little bit, because you and I talked about Guerrero and kind of a playing out the string here. Probably not great for the locker room and for the guys in it, because nobody wants a disgruntled Vladdy. But now we get a Vladdy who gets paid, and maybe that kind of calms things a little bit with this organization.
I don't know. I still think that this is a potentially tumultuous type season. I know that it calms them from knowing that Guerrero won't get traded. at the trade deadline, but the Yankees are better than them. I believe Boston's better than them. I'll go to war with Baltimore and Tampa Bay over them too. I think Toronto's probably a last place team in the division, and I think that there are some probably jobs on the line there too, Joe. Nothing would surprise me with this team this year. But by the way, not a lot is their fault. They cannot get players. I mean, look what they paid Anthony Santander of the Baltimore Orioles. My gosh, don't get me wrong, a really good player, but it's just the haves and the have-nots of baseball. There's just so many weird things happening right now in this game.
And it's growing too. We got teams playing in Sacramento at Little League fields. It feels like where every game is going to be an over. It's just it's head scratching here, but it's early yet. We're still 1 month into the season, a couple of weeks in. A lot of different things can take center stage. And by the way, Dodger fans, and apparently Ohtani's throwing bullpens. So take with that what you need. It won't be long before we get him back on the mound. But you are also a Florida Gator here, Craig. So you got to be real excited about what's happening here tonight in a couple of hours with Florida. A chance for another basketball national championship. Did you see it?
Yeah. I mean, going into look, they played better basketball than anybody in the country over the last month. So they went from me saying, oh, maybe they'll be a 2 seed to, wow, they're a 1 seed, And so, look, the thing that I really love most about this team, and it's not like the other teams too, and I lived those back-to-back championships, and then, of course, they went in 2000, and then they also, people forget, in 1994 went to a Final Four with Lon Kruger. I was at that one as well. But this team, Joe, seems to be a team that's never out of it. They're trailing, and it doesn't matter how much. Like, those other teams were super dominant. I would not say that the Gators have been super dominant, but the game against UConn and then the game against Houston, the game against Auburn, they were in the game. It was close. They were losing. They came back and they won. So I really, tonight, I'm not going to freak out until I see, a minute or 2 minutes left. I think this is going to be an entertaining game. Of course, I think the Gators are going to win. I mean, who would I be if I didn't think so? But they did feel like the best team in the country to me going into the tournament. I was obviously shocked that Duke blew that game or Houston came back and won that game, however you look at it. So what does it tell you? Gators only a 1.5. It's anybody's game tonight.
It's a coin toss here, but I think it also goes, I know a lot has been made about the experience factor from the coaching standpoint. What else could Todd Golden have done? He's pushed every button with these kids who, by the way, aren't a bunch of 18-year-olds. There's something to be said, Greg, for maturity and having guys that have actually played some games under one another, unlike Duke, who had all the talent in the world. But what good did it do you in when you finally got pushed and punched in the mouth and you couldn't counter back? It feels like, I don't know that Todd Golden's getting enough credit for what he's done with this team at this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He's done a fantastic job, clearly since he's taken over. And they have these, little bit players that come in, play 2, 3, 5, 20 minutes a game. Like this guy Condon, he doesn't even score. Hawk comes in, is nailing threes, playing good defense as well. And look, I think you could go back to the last game and throw out what I'm about to say. But look, Cooper Flagg was the best player on the court, and that team lost. I just have a hard time watching and sort of closing my eyes, Joe, and dreaming what this national championship is going to look like and picturing a championship where the best player on the court is Walter Clayton Jr. and they don't win. That would seem too weird based on the last 30 years of me watching the NCAA tournament.
True.
So it's like, I don't know, like how do the Gators not win this game having that guy there? I'll always back the team with the best player. And to me, he's far and away the best player among both teams tonight.
And he's a guy, I think, that's going to have a very long and quality NBA career ahead of him here. If the Gators win, Craig, can we start considering Florida a basketball school again? Just asking.
I don't think so. I would love it. This would be 3 championships in 2 decades, but those back-to-back championships, those 2 teams were incredible when they won those back-to-back with that group. But look, Florida basketball is definitely an elite program, not only in the SEC, but in the country as well. But we all know, Joe, football drives the bus at Florida, and until they get back to where we want them to be, it's still going to be that way. Yeah, I'll be cheering tonight. Very rare these days, by the way, for me to cheer for anything in sports. This is one of the rare things or teams that I cheer for. It'll be Florida tonight.
Now, listen, I said, I hope you folks took a nap. I was actually talking to Craig because this game going on at 9 o'clock, Mitch, is a little over the top here, is it not?
I know, and I did shut down for about 15 minutes earlier today to make sure I got this one in. Yeah, my son, too, is like, what time's the game start? 8:50? I'm like, buddy, I don't know. Like, if you can make it, we'll see. Well, what's the thought process behind 8:50 p.m.? Like, even the football game starts at 7:30, 8 o'clock. Why? I don't get it.
Exactly what I was saying, Greg. I was like, at 8:50 is
why?
Well, every other game started at 7, unless you were out in the West Coast, and even then, in Florida, coming from the West region, interestingly enough, has been playing at these odd hours the entire time. So, what is one more game as the Florida Gators are going for? Like Craig said, can you believe it? A couple of days, 3 national championships, and Houston, of course, has made it to this point a couple of times over their career, but have not won the national championship. So the storylines are plentiful. Craig, we appreciate it as always for you stopping by, man. We're rooting for the Gators. I'm holding a 14-1 ticket on Florida winning it all. So I am going to enjoy this one, especially when Walter Clayton wins that most outstanding player. But we got more on the game. We've got updates in Major League Baseball to get to, including the Dodgers and Ohtani. Oh my goodness. We'll tell you all about it when Game Time Decisions continues.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rim. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri, getting ready, of course, for the final college basketball game of the season, and it's going to be a good one as the Florida Gators, #1 seed, taking on the other #1 seed, that being the Houston Cougars tonight. Again, just before 9 o'clock Eastern time, all set for the tip-off there, and a very special edition of In-Game Live Bracket Central is coming up here at the top of the hour, and they will have you all squared away for all the action during that game and after. So a lot still going on leading up into this national championship, including, well, starting to see maybe a little bit more Florida love in the marketplace, as starting to see a lot more back to Florida -1s. There were a lot of places that had pick'ems here. I am seeing the total starting to get up to pretty solid 141s here. And I think that will only keep an eye on the marketplace leading up to tip-off. I think there's still a lot of public money that has not hit the marketplace just yet. And I think it's going to affect the total more than it's going to affect anything else. But we'll keep you posted on what's going to happen there. And we got plenty of Major League Baseball going on here tonight, including the Pirates in the top of the fifth inning now, hosting the St. Louis Cardinals. They've built that to a 4-0 lead here. We had mentioned earlier in the show that if it ain't broke, let's not fix it. And fading teams off of Sunday night baseball has always been a pretty good angle to take. And in this case, we have both the Red Sox and the Cardinals coming off a doubleheader yesterday, including that Sunday night baseball game. And right now, Pittsburgh taking advantage at home 4-0. And I believe Berrios on top of Boston right now, 2-1 as they head to the top of the fourth inning in that matchup. And no score underway. Minnesota and Kansas City was another interesting battle. And keep an eye on Texas and the Cubs. This is in Chicago. It just got underway. And this is a game where temperatures are going to be about 20 degrees cooler than what they were over the weekend. The wind is blowing in, and you don't have to look much further than the total in this game, which closed at 6. That's right, at 6. Meanwhile, the Cubs have just coming off a weekend series where the weather wasn't great. The wind had been blowing in, and guess what? All 3 games against the Padres went flying over the total. So it's going to be interesting to see Steele versus Eovaldi. That game is just underway. In-game total now 5.5. So, boy, I can tell you here as I'm peeking on one of the screens, it looks cold in Chicago at Wrigley right now here. But a couple of games still to come here tonight on the West Coast slate, including the Cincinnati Reds sending out Hunter Green, taking on Logan Webb of the Giants. You realize the Giants are just, one game behind the Los Angeles Dodgers right now. The Giants have been playing some tremendous baseball here, and Logan Webb has been one of the most consistent pitchers in Major League Baseball for a few years now, and he is going to go out to the mound. It's been all San Francisco money, but I watched Hunter Green pitch last week, and my goodness, this guy is hitting triple digits every inning and seems to get stronger as the game goes on. I don't know what his K-prop is tonight, but anytime I see Hunter Green on a mound there for the Cincinnati Reds, I'm looking to go up and over his strikeout prop. His stuff is absolutely electric. The problem he's having, like many pitchers with the Reds, is that they can't get any run support. The Reds are truly feast or famine right now, where if they're not scoring 11 runs, they're scoring no runs or 1 run. And that's what happened to Hunter Green his last start here. 6.5 is what I am seeing that the strikeout prop is for Hunter Green. And I think that's an up and over. I think it was 6.5 last go around too, when he struck out 8 in his last start. So he is, if you haven't had a chance to see him pitch, do yourself a favor and catch some of this game tonight if you can. The stuff is absolutely electric. So Hunter Green definitely could be into consideration if he stays healthy. Strikeout king of the National League here this year. And that's saying something because they got some arms in the National League. You got Houston taking on Seattle. Logan Gilbert out there for Seattle, their best pitcher by far, although he doesn't have a win. That's not because of his pitching. That is way more to do with the fact that the Seattle Mariners love to strike out and not score enough runs to win games. They're hoping in Seattle here tonight that doesn't happen and that they'll be able to take advantage maybe a road-weary Houston here as they begin another West Coast road trip there. Baltimore and Arizona, Eflin taking on Zach Gallen. My question is, which Zach Gallen shows up? The one that started the season getting shellacked, or the one that, struck out 13 Yankees or something along those lines last time out? I just don't know which one is going to show up. I do know both of these teams have had some trouble over the last week here, putting runs on the board there. We saw Arizona just lose 2 out of 3 there to Washington, who out-hit them across the board. And we've seen Baltimore struggle to score runs against the Boston Red Sox. So which of these two teams shows up here tonight? That's going to be the big question. And then the game of the night coming up at 10 o'clock is going to be the Padres visiting the Athletics. Athletics, of course, they're home in Sacramento. And this is kind of a interesting ballpark. We've seen a lot of overs so far with games played in this ballpark. And I don't know that that's going to change here tonight. Not a lot of great pitching with the Athletics. Severino on the mound. The Padres have been crushing the ball. The Angels are built to be an over team. I don't know that the market has adjusted quite yet to what's going on in this Sacramento field, where it's a very short porch in left field. We could get an awful lot of runs here tonight. King on the mound versus Severino. Look to play the over 8 if you can get it. All right, we got much more to go here. An update in the NBA, plus some best bets for tonight's national championship game on the grid.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, coast to coast, only on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that ring. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on this Monday in the SportsGrid Network as we get ready for the tip-off of the national championship game, college basketball, the final game of the year. There will be a champion this time tomorrow. Will it be the Florida Gators or will it be the Houston Cougars here? Again, pretty much a pick'em game here. Not a whole lot going on in the marketplace. Back and forth from a pick'em to Florida as a small favorite. It really doesn't make a difference here. Just pick the winner and have yourself some fun. Houston, the number one defensive efficient team in the country, although Florida has also been playing and doesn't get enough credit for the defense that they have been playing as of late. You know, don't forget these big games that they've come from behind and won that everyone keeps pointing to. That only happens if your defense gets stops. It happened against UConn. It happened against Auburn. That only works if your defense clamps down and allows your offense the opportunity to get back into the game. And that's exactly what the Florida Gator defense has been doing. Listen, the Cougars are also enjoying a kind of quasi home court advantage here. The game is in the Alamodome in San Antonio, Texas. It's about a 3-hour drive from the Houston campus. So there will certainly be a contingency of Houston fans on site, but do not discount the Gator fans also taking the trip there. Either way, you know that we've seen the Florida Gators win on the road all year long, quite honestly. It hasn't just been a home and away thing. I definitely think this game and the value, because I truly believe if it comes down to it and which team has the player I trust the most to win this game when it matters the most, it's Walter Clayton Jr. and it's Florida. And none of us should wake up tomorrow being like, oh, my God, I cannot believe Walter Clayton Jr. dropped 30 and won the game late for Florida. He's been doing it all season long. He's been doing it all tournament long. Nobody should be shocked if that is how this plays out. I also think that we've already seen Houston get sped up in games against other SEC teams this season. We saw them get sped up against Texas Tech. We just saw them get sped up against Gonzaga, in which, as much as they like to, and Houston ranks 360th in tempo, it's the 5th slowest team in college basketball in the country. But when they've played against teams who have more depth and are very athletic, they have run with them, and their scoring has been there. I mean, we're talking about a Florida team that over the last 2 months has not dropped less than, 70 points in any game. The last one they did, in fact, was their loss to Tennessee a month and a half ago, at which point that was their last loss of the season. We've seen that Houston is more than capable with their three-point shooting of scoring 75, 80 points with anyone. They just had to do it a couple of games ago against the Zags. We saw it against Auburn in a losing effort for them. We've seen it against Alabama. I think this total is artificially low. And that doesn't take into consideration that we don't know what the refs and what the whistle's going to be like. Is there going to be a lot of free opportunities at points from the free throw line with these teams here? Are there going to be foul trouble? I know Florida is going to want to get up and run, but don't forget, Florida's depth has been a positive for them all year long. Ask Johnny Broome how the depth of Florida with those big men have worked out for him in that last game. Florida wears teams down. Houston is the toughest team in the country. My question will remain, what does Houston have left after going to war with Duke? And that kind of comeback here, I would almost look to Houston in the first half, but I would not be mad at anybody that played both team totals to go over, which are hovering around 70 and a half points. I think the loser of this game gets at least 70 points. So I like the over. I like the team totals over. I do ultimately think it's going to come down to who makes the big shot late. My money will be on the Gators, but I see a scenario where this lands 75-71 as opposed to 65-60, which is what a lot of people in the marketplace seem to think. So I'm looking for an over. I'm looking for some points here tonight. Either way, going to be one great national championship game. Don't go anywhere. In-game live. Bracket Central is coming up next on the Grid.